bit more in a second.
Hey everybody, welcome to Not Another Tooling podcast with myself, Austin Pearson, and my wonderful co-host, Mr. Matt. How are you today, Matt?
I'm doing good, man. I'm good, despite the cold. Even though it's only like midday now, I'm having such a variety of a day. So it's a good, and I've got loads more taking place afterwards. So yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah, so for everyone who's listening to this later, it is very cold in the UK. It was -3 when I went out for a run.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was doing 300 burpees this morning. It was -3 outside, so there you go.
But it is properly sunny, as you can see from all of our backgrounds, which is great. And today we have a wonderful special guest. So welcome to the podcast, Louis. Thank you for coming on.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I assume it's just as cold where you are, is it?
It is very cold, I have to say. Very, very, very beautiful to look at, though. It's nice and white everywhere still, so it's very good.
Super. And other than what looks like an insane collection of Lego behind you, is it?
It is an insane collection of Lego, I have to admit, yes.
Very cool. Very cool. What is it that you do, Louis?
So I am the co-founder of Enably, which is a automation, orchestration and agentic business focusing all the way from business process through to sort of enterprise service management. And we focus mainly on advisory and then delivering actually for our customers and enabling them to use the technology that they're hoping to use.
Superb. And what has happened in your life to get you to this place in your journey?
Yeah. Well, it all started probably up until a year ago. We went out for drinks with my co-founder Dean, and we decided it was a good idea to start a business. But prior to that, so I was CIO at Keyloop for a couple of years. Before that, I was VP of IT engineering at Sophos, the cybersecurity company, for 6-7 years. And then before that, I was the head of IT technology at Virgin Trains. And I've had a background of the last nearly 30 years in technology, starting out on like VMS, which many people won't know what it is, unfortunately, but going all the way back. So, pre-dot-com boom was when I started in technology.
I didn't know he was at Virgin, because I knew Dean was at Virgin. I was actually on a call earlier on, and I was talking about I think what Dean told me is when there's like issues taking place, everybody's essentially the same rank, and anyone in senior IT is basically on the side of the platform helping out with customers and stuff as well, which I thought was a cool story.
It's one of the only places I've worked that has a non-hierarchical organizational structure, which was something that Richard Branson wanted to bring forward into the business. And it's really good. So if you're a train manager, you run the train. You are the most senior person in the business at that point. So whether you're CEO or whether you're head of IT or technology, if you need to go, so if they're short and someone serve coffee, you go serve coffee. And that's a really interesting business model, very fluid, but really empowering for the organization.
I love that.
That sounds like a podcast.
Oh yeah, it's a whole topic
in itself. Yeah, amazing. So, enterprise orchestration. How would you describe what that is today?
It's really interesting. I think if you'd asked me that question maybe 5-6 years ago, you would have got a different answer. And I think, where we are today, it's morphing quite quickly as well because of the rate of change that's coming within technology, specifically driven by AI and agentic. But, really, enterprise orchestration is looking at business process end to end and using technologies like an integration layer, iPaaS, looking at how you deliver automation, how you then deliver things like AI and agentic, to drive end-to-end business process and bringing systems and people and teams together within those processes. And ultimately, what it gives you is visibility, the ability for you to observe what's happening with your end-to-end business process. So, I think it's for a lot of businesses today, it's an area of real focus, because as you start moving from a world where we've got applications for nearly every single function you could ever imagine, right? I mean, most organizations, they have in excess of 200 to 800 SaaS applications, and maybe a quarter of those are managed by IT. But there is business process that runs through all of that. So when you start thinking about enterprise orchestration, is how do I pull all of those together, understand, for example, the full hire to retire process. How does that actually work? Can I see it? Can I observe it? Is it at an atomic level? And that really is what enterprise orchestration is about.
And just a quick one on that is because my background when I was at Capgemini was automation, and that's more infrastructure style orchestration, that level of stuff, infrastructure based more than anything else. Then there was a bit of RPA and bits and pieces. So I'm looking at enterprise orchestration now. If it's like strip apart all of those components, like what's the layers that we're talking about, and all of the individual components of enterprise orchestration? Is enterprise orchestration the top capability level? And then if so, what are the ones that sit below it?
Yeah, I very much see it as a top level capability. So, and if you flow down from there, you've got to think about your integration strategy, and that is a key component. You can't orchestrate if you're not integrated. You've got to think about your data strategy. How is your data flowing? How does it go end to end? What's the provenance of that data? And then you need to think about the components that underpin it. So your system of records, for example, do you have a headless architecture whereby you're not necessarily logging into those individual systems of records, you're going through one single point, but ultimately what you have is each of those system of records are the components and the building blocks with your integration layer, with your integration strategy, with your data strategy, that allow you then to start thinking about much more grander scheme of orchestration, and actually how can you then compose that across and orchestrate it across your enterprise and your business. It can go all the way down, and it does, especially in product companies, where if you start talking about DevOps, and you talk about SRE, and you talk about like observability to some degree as well. That is a very good use case of what is enterprise orchestration from a product perspective, for example. So we see it in pockets, in different types of companies, in different functions. But this is about raising it up to actually using it at an enterprise level. How do you do it across all of your business functions, all of your key business processes?
Nice. So why do customers need to pay attention to this and do something with it today?
So I mentioned about the rate of change within the technology world, right? And this is, I'm going to go on a tangent a little bit to bring it back, right? So if you think about, we're always pushing as technology leaders and technology businesses, we want the next best thing, and we're always moving, looking at how we can commercialize it ultimately. How can we make sure that we're driving value for our customers? But the reality of it, every now and again, an event happens when technology leaps past business and hits consumer, right? It doesn't happen that often, but when it does happen, like with ChatGPT, it creates this whole storm of activity where the businesses are now in catch up. So tech organizations are trying to catch up with what's happening from an AI perspective, usage, generative, agentic orchestration. They are really trying to move as fast as they can to commercialize and monetize this new technology, which is now in the hands of consumers. And that really drives a rate of change within businesses, right? And across all businesses, because now you have employees who have a better experience and with their own tech than they can get access to in their workplace. And that always drives a level of pace. Now, as a business, to really leverage that, if I want to have an agentic, a digital twin, something that's able to take action for me, that's on something that is not necessarily deterministic where it needs to be reasoned, I've got to have all these foundations in place. So I speak to a lot of customers, which is, the board are telling me I've got to reduce headcount by 20% because of AI. You've got to be able to leverage this. And actually, to be able to do it, you've got to have quite a lot of these foundational elements in place. So I think for businesses, as you look ahead, if you want to be able to drive efficiencies, which nearly every business does at the moment, if you want to try and reduce risk and protect revenue, if you want to grow revenue, you've got to be able to have visibility of your processes. You've got to be able to fine tune them, to tweak, to look at where the opportunity is for you to differentiate from your competitors. And that is why orchestration and is really, really important in the years ahead. And I think when you boil that down and take it back to why should I be paying attention to iPaaS and orchestration? you've got to start on this journey to go and say, well, how am I going to connect all my business systems and my applications? Do I get visibility of my processes? How do I then start to automate? How do I then pull that together with orchestration? And how can I start leveraging AI and agentic in these workflows? So I think it's not necessarily oh my God, you need to do this straight away, and it's a panic, but these are real fundamental building blocks for the sort of technology we're going to be using over the next 10 years.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I can completely see especially in that agentic world, right? It's already chaos in some organizations, let alone trying to link that into business processes and things like that, where a lot of them are still using IBM BPM or something like that, which somebody set up years ago and hasn't changed it since, and now they've leapfrogged into this entirely different world. So it's pretty crazy. So where do you find most customers are today in this journey?
So we have we sort of put them into 3 groups. There is a 4th group which I'll briefly talk about, but mainly they sit in 3 groups. So the group 1 is, these are organizations that they've got maybe a good level of SaaS applications. They understand the business process to some degree. They have got some point-to-point integrations. They might have limited RPA usage within their business, but really it's not strategic. It's very much tactical in a sense that you're doing it at a point where I've got some pain. I'm trying to solve that pain. I'll do an integration. It's point to point. It's not a part of a wider strategy to enable the business. It's very tactical, and we see customers in that phase, and then we see, and I'd say that's probably
sorry to interrupt you. Quick question.
Yes.
What's the problem with that point to point?
Oh, right. Okay. So it's the scalability, really. I mean, that's one of the biggest challenges you have. Scalability. If you think about from an integration perspective, every time I want to go and connect application A to 10 other applications, I have to go and build each of those integrations. Okay. And so if you then start to scale that out, think about the number of integrations that you're going to be building that are going to be custom, that you're then going to have to support and maintain. And it becomes really easy for it to become something where it's like a cottage industry, where I've got an entire team of people just working on these custom integrations that I'm putting in place. And it's not something that is composable for your business. I can't plug and play on an application. I have to go back and redo all that work. And it's very hard to manage that at scale. I think the other challenge around that is, how do you govern it? Like, how do you secure it? How do you govern it? How do you make sure the standards are being followed? What guardrails are you putting up? It's not easy. And then, where the utopia point is, you want to be able to federate this out to your business. You don't want to be, IT shouldn't be creating industries where we do everything for the business. We want to be in a position where we're able to allow the business to go and consume these services within our governance framework, right? And, it's virtually impossible to have business functions realistically standing up their own integrations custom. So a lot of it is about scalability. It's around what controls you can bring in, and it's really about how can you drive from it being, like in the old days. I'll give you a great example, actually, Matt. It's like going from a legacy ITSM platform to a modern ITSM platform. There's so many, you can do the basics. Anything outside of doing the basics, you're into custom scripting, you're doing into this world of, I have to put a lot of effort in to get the return back out. Whereas a lot of them now, modern ITSM platforms come with all the pre-canned workflows. You don't have to put all the hard work in, all the yards in, because it's done for you. And Workato is a great example of that. So it comes out the box with 8,500 connectors to SaaS applications. All the hard yards are done. In an interface which I can go in and compose a recipe that allows me to not just connect, but then actually take an automated approach of a business process, and I can apply already pre-canned observability into that process. So it allows you to consume much quicker and much easier as a business as you scale out.
Nice. I don't have a question related to that, but I'll hold.
Yeah. So you were saying there were three types of organisation, right? We talked about the first one. So what's the second one?
So the second one is where you see this quite a lot. You see businesses in the space where they've recognised where tier one business process are in their businesses, how important they are, and they have gone down the path of actually putting in an iPaaS or some integration layer to actually sit in between, provide that integration, maybe do ETL or ELT, do some transformation of data, etc. Part of those end-to-end business process, and you'll see that for organizations that do lead to cash, for example, right? It's a really important key business process, and you will see, several organizations will invest in making sure they have the right integration layer, and the right, maybe MDM put in there from a data perspective, and they invest in those areas, but it's only in one or two of the core business processes, and that's where they're focused, and they don't look at the wider ecosystem of the business process that are within their business. So we see, I would say a good chunk of the organizations we talk to are in sort of group one and group two, and then group three is where they've actually gone, okay, I have an integration strategy, and now I've got an iPaaS. I understand my enterprise application landscape, I understand my business landscape, and now I'm able to actually leverage the iPaaS to start driving automation and then start to orchestrate actually the business process. And they're the ones who are adopting agentic much earlier than the other groups, because it's far harder to get to that point. So, and we see, there are several businesses in that bucket, in that group, shall I say, but it is a maturity. They've invested in the hygiene factors all the way through over the last 5, 6, 7 years to get to this point.
Perfect. And you mentioned there was a fourth.
There is a fourth. So the fourth is quite interesting. So this is organizations who are well in the path of actually using agentic at scale, sitting on top of their iPaaS, and they are looking at really sophisticated use cases for them to actually drive outcomes for their business. And they're at the stage now where they're actually looking at their enterprise operating model in light of the orchestrated business processes, and that is a change of how you think about things today. So our entire business models up until this point, whether you go functional, regional, whatever, have always been on the play that you have human resources and human capital in every part of it, right? So how does an organizational design change based on the fact that you will have some workers who are digital and some who are human, right? And I've seen I was on a panel this week where one of the sort of hosts were talking about the fact that they've been working with a customer and they've now put their digital assets onto their org chart.
I was just going to say, yeah. So ultimately, the overall business operating model is built up of a mixture of actual robots and people.
Yeah, exactly that. Right. So it's a really interesting. You'll see more of this, I think, in the next 6 months as businesses start to advance, and I think agentic will add some level of this. I think actual real robotics will add another layer to this as well. It's an interesting sort of frontier of what is going to be the sort of next enterprise of operating models that come out of this new world of technology we're delivering.
Interesting.
Yeah. So let's say, I mean, I think most businesses that we'll work with are in kind of one or two of your grouping there. So let's say you're in one or two. Two questions. One is how, where do you even start with this? But also, before you start, you probably, or as you're starting, you need to build a business case, right, for change. And building a business case for this kind of thing is not always straightforward. So where do you start on the business case to start with?
Yeah, this is an issue a lot of businesses face, actually, and understandably. And the problem you have with these type of when you approach this at a capability level, right? It all sounds really good, right? It's really easy. I look at it as I need this capability to drive my business forward. Okay, and when you go into a boardroom asking to build out a capability, but say the value is not going to come until you build the automations, the orchestration on top, the business case is flawed. And it's really, really challenging. So what you tend to see is business approach this in one of two ways, right? They go down the capability path where they understand, say, look, we're going to go and invest in an iPaaS, and a part of that is going to give us the capability to connect all of our applications. And this business case is going to do the foundational work that allows us then to build the automations on top. And you effectively take it as a sunk cost as a business, right? I'm not going to get a return in the short term for what I'm putting in, but the returns come year 2, year 3, or year 1, year 2, year 3, depending on how well your execution engine is within your business. That really does require the concept of I'm investing to get a return in the future. The problem is you can't tell them what the return is going to be because you've not gone through and defined what the use cases are, because you're taking it as a capability layer. So that is one, but we see businesses go down that approach with we know it's the right thing for the business. We know it's going to deliver the returns, but they build out their sort of planning cycle, and the way they do their business cases is we're going to invest, we're going to have a period where we then look at the use cases, and then that is going to layer on top of the investment that we've already made, and we'll see what returns we get back over time and measure that on a continuous basis. So we do see organizations do that. We also see organizations take the...
Sorry, Lou, just a quick one. So who are the people who are doing that? Are these people that have done the reps already, they've gone through that process, or are they just well informed or well sold to? Like, what's the avatar of the person that is making that, and persons that are making that long-term commitment, knowing they're not going to see return for multiple years in some cases?
Yeah, so you need like board. That is generally an executive board level sort of decision where you're looking at, okay, I understand from a strategy perspective where the business wants to go, what it's trying to achieve it as a set of objectives, and you're looking at the vehicles that's going to help drive that forward. And this is one of those vehicles, generally speaking. If you're talking about de-risking, talking about reducing complexity, and talking about reducing efficiencies, if you're looking at, I don't want to say saving money per se, you want to look at how you can increase revenue. These are the type of things where you look at and go, this will give me a foundations to actually start to really try and accelerate on some of these activities, and things that can actually drive real metrics and key results for businesses. But that is generally a very strategic minded organization, and where you're looking at this from a multiple year on return. I think it's really important when we talk to different customers about, we have to meet them where they are on that journey. So there's no point in me going and talking to a customer about, hey, you should be really strategic, if actually they're firefighting all the time.
I had one of those conversations today. Yeah.
So I think the other approach is what we see quite a lot is where you try to bundle the capability with the actual use cases. And so what you find there is, if you've got a really good use case, so if you're going from one ERP to another ERP and doing a migration, and you've got point-to-point APIs, and you've got limited automation, and you're going to be making this big change to a new ERP system, that's a perfect opportunity to go and deliver an iPaaS, make it composable, think about the automation, because you're going under a wider, bigger program of change. It's much easier to get the business case through, because you're committing on a large transformational program. Where that approach gets challenging is where you're not undertaking a large transformation, or you're not going in for quite heavy changes of systems or business applications. And then what you try to do is find the best use case you possibly can to justify the introduction of an iPaaS. And that can be challenging, because you go too big and you go too bold, it's hard to measure, it's hard to realize, you haven't built up your execution capability or the muscle memory you need to actually be able to go and deliver this at scale. And so we find that can be quite a difficult challenge for some organizations. So a lot of it is actually trying to find where you are as a business. If you're an IT leader, you're an integration, you're head of integrations, or you're an integrations team, and you've got point-to-point everywhere. I think there it's about looking at, well, how can I break, for example, the lineage between company revenue growth versus headcount growth in my organization? Is there a way I can find a way where I can actually say, I'm not going to hire a net new headcount next year, and instead bring an iPaaS in, which is going to make us much more scalable as an organization, as a business. So I think that you've got to try and find what works for that company or for your business. But there are plenty of ways to get a business case to fit. I think that the key is not to go too bold and start promising the world. just make sure you either have really defined use cases where there's value, or go in under a larger program, or realistically, be very strategic about it if you can, and look 2-3 years out. And this is a very easy business case if you're looking further ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. That's an interesting one. That second one, you kind of see that fairly regularly with not just with this, with all sorts of things. It's like, right, okay, we're moving to this version of SAP. Great, let's get all these other bits and pieces around it. And it's so definitely something that people are used to doing for investment, I think. So let's say that somebody says, yeah, here we go. Here's your money. Go off and invest in something. Where would you suggest that people start? Because most organizations will go, okay, great. What does Gartner say? What are the top 10 vendors? Let's write an RFI or RFP that says, here are the technical things I need, based on what we've read with various analysts and conferences you've been to. Send that out, and then we'll select something. And I know it's one of Matt's bugbears is like, hang on a minute, you're going to need some people, some process changes. You need to think about a lot of this stuff before you then select a tool, and you often don't need the greatest, latest, everything, all singing, all dancing anyway. So where would you suggest somebody starts who they're at 1 or 2 and they're like, right, I need to get up the level of maturity? What do I do?
I think it's I would always, I'm a purist when it comes to these things, right? So I always start at use case as being the key vehicle for me. I think, regardless of what you're looking at, whether it's an enterprise application, whether it's iPaaS, doesn't make a blind bit of, whether it's network infrastructure, it doesn't make a blind bit of difference. You've got to start at the use cases of what you're trying to achieve. How does that align to the operational goals of the business? How can you have a positive impact on that? And then I bring it back down to, actually, if I've got use cases, how do I validate those? And that doesn't need to be a labor intensive task, but how can I validate, is the juice worth the squeeze on some of these things that I'm looking at? Do I have the execution ability to do it? What's the total cost of ownership? And this is one of the key things that I find really, still to this day, really frustrating, is people go and buy a tool, blame they've got like drug dealer marketing that's taken place, and they've got something that as they scale out, they can't afford it. You really need to understand what you're buying, how much you can afford, over the lifetime of what you want to consume. And once we've got those sort of things coming together, and you've got a vision of what you want to try and achieve, how you can influence key business objectives, then it's about, can you measure this stuff going forward? And I think, if you can start ticking these answers off, and you're understanding, like, what capability do I have? Do I have the right people? Do I have the right team structure? Do I have, to Matt's sort of point, is do I have the right operating model and processes that sit behind it for me to operate this thing? And if you're getting through that and you're going, yes, I've got all the answers to everything, great, then you're into a technology play. But I would absolutely start at the beginning on this. We've done 30 years or 40 years now of technology, about building out frameworks and governance for us to be able to manage technology in our business. And we don't go throwing that away just because we get excited by a bit of tooling that comes in from a vendor. We have to go through the process and make sure it's right for the business we're in, not it's right for me as an individual in this business. So once you've got that, and you're in a position where you go, okay, I think I've lined up, we're into the tech conversation. We see a lot of RFIs and RFPs. Nothing wrong with them, as long as you can do input-based specification. I'm all on board. If you can't, you can do all the research yourself and do output-based specification by actually talking to the vendors and understanding, where the use cases are, where their value is, what they bring. And but for me, this is, I think iPaaS is very much critical to the newer technologies that are coming out. So if I was going through a tooling selection process now, I absolutely, in this area, would be thinking 3 to 5 years, and what technology is going to be coming out, how are they going to be leveraging it, best place to do things within my organization. So, like the agentic conversation, I don't think you can unpick this now from iPaaS. I think it's absolutely critical that you have the right iPaaS and integration layer to enable you to do orchestration and then into agentic with MCP that's coming. That's sort of getting real traction now. The Model Context Protocol, which is how do I govern, how do I secure my digital agents, right, my agentic workers. That that is not something I necessarily want to have inside a system of record. I want to have that agnostic. I want to have that overseeing different agents that are in the area within my organization. That one top level agent might have 10 agents working for it. So think of it like an absolutely like a functional model. And I really feel that this is done at the integration layer, not necessarily done in header sort of systems of record. Now, I'm not saying you don't deploy them there. Absolutely, you do. If you've got ServiceNow or you've got, I don't know, Salesforce, absolutely, right? There's great use cases for on application agentic use cases. How you manage, how you govern it, how you then bring it all together, I think is an integration play, and that is why I think you should be looking further ahead at which of the iPaaS players are providing those services that I need to consume in the coming 2, 3, 4 years. So it's a difficult space, but I think there are some iPaaS players like Workato now who are, I think, a couple of years ahead with this technology. They're deploying, they're thinking about their sort of thought leadership in this space is really insightful about how they're approaching MCP in other areas. I think it's a key consideration. Don't just look at this as an integration problem.
Yeah, although I think a lot of people find that quite hard to do, right? The pace of change, as you mentioned earlier, is so huge right now. Most people can't keep up with what's happened, let alone thinking about 3 to 5 years into the future, right? But there's a really interesting point there, which is, how if you're selecting a tool or a vendor, how flexible are they? What partnerships do they have? Are they able to move quickly and adapt quickly to the market to be able to cope with the pace of change that is out there? And that's an interesting question that you don't really see on an RFP these days, but in this space feels like it's probably pretty important, I would imagine.
It is. I think one of the challenges is, and this is the problem we have as a tech industry, right? We build this reliance on services and businesses in the tech world, right? So, it's when you look at some of the really challenging events that have taken place. I look at like JLR, for example, right, with the compromise they had and the damage that's done to their organization. Really pleased they've recovered from that, going through the recovery process. You look at the impact of that, and reality is there's such a reliance on these technology companies that we have out there today that if you lose the ability to execute in a digital world, your business pretty much comes to a halt. And that can be really challenging for a lot of businesses. And now what we're saying is, hey, look, the technology is accelerating so quickly. These firms that you've relied on for so long, you're sort of relying on them to accelerate with you or for you, and for you then to consume what they do without knowing actually if where they're going is the right direction, because this is a new frontier in effect. So and it can be quite challenging, and I do think the industry, there's a lot of hype out there, there's a lot of marketing that is being pushed out, and there's a lot of concern about AI and the direction we're going from a societal point of view. And it's really, it's very, very hard as an IT leader to sit there and go, what, I've got a crystal ball, I know exactly what's going to happen here, I know which horses to back, I'm not worried about an AI bubble, it's all going to be good. It's like this is hard. At the best of times it's hard, and this is probably a point now where most organizations, they look at it, they can make educated, informed decisions, but we're going to get it wrong, right? And we're going to have to undo some of the things that we've done. There'll be changes of direction. I think it's about trying to put yourself in the best position to as a business to be able to maneuver to these changes as they come about, and having suppliers that are in the same sort of situation as you are, and they can navigate it.
Yeah, Yeah, so and I totally agree. You know, every organisation that I'm working with at the moment, they are fearful, I think, around where that they're not in the race, that they're not being
Mm.
able to adopt this technology as quickly as they would as their competitors, which isn't true because their
I was going to
competitors are
say,
in the
yeah, it's
same
a
boat, right?
falsehood, isn't it?
You know, it's just
I'm
like,
thinking back to a scenario where, like, I'm seeing a customer on a stage of a particular vendor, how great the story is. I'm like, and where are you guys? That ain't the story. But that's not true. So yeah, the Mr. Jones, Mrs. Jones, is it Mr. and Mrs. Jones? Is that the player, the envy of the neighbour, but they're all in a bad position anyway. Yeah.
yeah. So you've been involved in plenty of these projects now. What are the top 3 things that you should and shouldn't do if you're
Yeah, so should do. Let's start with the things that you should do.
yeah.
I would,
Louis. Call Louis. No,
yeah, call me, and we'll. No. I think that the key thing here, this is unit, and everyone have heard this before because it's absolutely what we do as an industry. You know, a plan, right? Really detailed planning about what you're trying to achieve, why you're trying to do it. How does that link to the objectives of your organization? Are you able to measure what you're going to be doing going forward? Is it measurable? Make sure you understand use cases. Make sure you have the right stakeholders. Like, you don't do this to the business. Like, I can't stress this enough. Like, the amount of people I talk to, which is like, hey, if I go to talk to a CFO or a finance leader, and they're like, IT are doing this to my function. It's like, that's not how it's meant to be. They talk to IT and they go, the business, they don't know what they're doing. We're going to roll this out. They're not on board with the changes we're delivering. That's a business problem because that's change management, and that's that. It's like, look, you've got to build this like stakeholder relationship. This is business process running through systems. It's everyone's concern, right? And I do genuinely believe building those relationships with your business, talking about what you can jointly achieve. Go back to like the 7 habits of like win-win. Like, how can you both be successful as organizations by working together on something which has a meaningful impact to the company's outcomes? I think that's so important. So I think it is absolutely do the groundwork, do the foundations, build the relationships, and then pay attention to the governance. And I think when it comes to a lot of these things, security still to this day, and governance and observability are afterthoughts at times. And just because you're doing something in integration layer doesn't mean you stop there and you don't think about it. I think they are absolutely key things that you must consider as you go down this journey. So there are 3 things I would absolutely do. I think the things not to do is to run off and go buy tech. Like, don't run off with the first vendor you meet and go off and buy that product. I would also be very, very conscious about getting locked in to vendor technology where it's a bolt on to their core product. I think that is one of the challenges we see quite a lot. I talk to companies who they go, I'm a this shop, I'm a that shop, and they are only interested in buying technology from that one, super vendor. And that lock in, that stops you from having the ability and flexibility to come away to use it as a composable layer. So don't get caught out by getting vendor lock-in because you believe that you're a certain shop of some form or another. And then the other thing I would absolutely not do is I wouldn't look at this as something which is very tactical and something that's hidden away in the background, and doesn't I would discuss this with leadership. I would discuss this with the executive. I would bring the awareness of how important this is to the business going, in the long term, in the long run. You see a lot of integration and iPaaS deliveries being done as a byproduct of something else, and they never get any airtime. And I don't think businesses appreciate how important this layer is to their operations. So they're the 3 things I would do, 3 things I would not do, as you go down this sort of venture.
Perfect. And that leads to a really interesting question, which is, you talked about measuring success earlier, and assuming you're aligned with the business objectives and you've got measurements in place, that's all great. One thing that we often see is, right, this is a point in time investment. Right, let's just buy this tool, let's put it in, solve this problem, and then it gets dusty, and in 3 or 4 years' time, you replace it with something else, right? So in this space, how do you make sure that there is constant improvement that is continuing to add value to the business?
I think it's a really good point, and good question. I think this is not a iPaaS problem. This is we
Right.
see this problem across the board. Okay,
Yeah.
I buy a product, I then don't invest in said product post that point. I don't look at the value it's driving me on an incremental basis, and I'm not looking at how do I, there might be lots of tinkering taking place or improvements taking place, but they're invisible to the business until they become not invisible to the business. And whether that's a, hey, we're running hot on expense plan, let's look at how we can reduce our expense plan, or whether the CEO has a WTF moment, right? And this happens with certain said vendors when they suddenly get their EDP or they get their large bill come in, and they're like, wow, what on earth is going on? And then there's a series of reactions to that, right? And organizations tend to react very well when the CEO gets upset about, why am I seeing such an incremental increase in pricing on a year-on-year basis for something, and we've not done anything about it. And I think, I would strongly recommend you build this into your operating model of your IT or technology department, right? You've got to look at every investment you make on a 3-year horizon, and you've got to then actually work that 3-year investment. Think of it like a portfolio. So I'm going to manage that stock. I'm going to manage that asset. I'm going to continually get the most out of it. I'm going to share to the business the value that I bring, and I'm going to have it on a review cycle, whether that be 1, 2, or 3 years. And technology is in for a period of time, and I design it in a way that allows it to be composable. Okay, and if you go at it from that approach, where you drive your investments as investments into your technology, and you're constantly looking at ways of which you can demonstrate the value and the incremental improvements that you're delivering on said platform, it's really easy, right? I think where a lot of businesses really do fall down is they roll it out, they deploy it, they've got like 3, 4 people working on it in the background. No one ever sees the incremental value that's built, and it just becomes a horrible hygiene factor in the background. And you've got to, as leaders, you've got to raise this up. You've got to really bring it up to the senior leaders about what you're doing, what's incrementally beneficial, and how are you impacting these key results. What KPIs do you have in the business that you're looking at? How are you impacting those? And if you're not impacting them, have the honesty to go back and go, well, hang on, what am I doing with this investment? And I think a lot of businesses do exactly what you said, which is put it in tactical deployment. It's not strategic. They're not looking to measure it on an ongoing basis. And then they wonder why it's challenged or questioned at a financial review in 2 years, 3 years' time.
Louis, you mentioned around the KPI bit there, and this Austin and I talk about this a lot. And it's the connecting the stuff that we're doing at this level, this technology play or whatever it might be, to back to the business and having some measurable link in there, that ongoing. There's another customer I was working with, and the business case was looking super scary. And I'm like, well, cool. If it works out, let's make sure we continuously measure it, because we don't want to be big bang implementation goes in, and then 1 year later, no one's measuring it and it just gets swept under the carpet, and then the renewal comes a year after that and it's like, oh, what value? So I think that clarity of having the technology layer, capability layer, whatever you want to call it, measurably linking back up to what the business is achieving, that for me is a missing component in a lot of organizations where there's just a disconnect between the capability and technology and the business.
I think layered metrics is an entire podcast in its own right.
Yeah.
Because I love layered metrics, and starting at like a strategic level and enterprise level and working away all the way down to operational metrics, and understand the provenance of that data and how you're influencing business outcomes. I have a business process, I have some workers, but how is the technology enabling them to meet the objectives of the business? They are measurable if you do it right. but
Yeah.
a lot of businesses, how many business QBRs have you been to where you see a retrospective view of data that shows you absolutely nothing other than revenue by region or by product, or by, it doesn't tell you the data points or give you the clear things that says, well, what's impacting this? What did you do within that 3-month window? What data was served to you that allowed you to make an actionable decision to change the course of this data, and show me the chronology, the sort of chronology of data decision through that cycle and through that period, and how the metrics all the way through are impacted as a result of that. It's such a common thing that I see as well, Matt. Sometimes it feels a little bit frustrating, but you've got to really want to. There's got to be a want to actually go and say, okay, I've got this investment. How do I prove to the business that it's doing what it said? That what I laid out as a business case, I'm willing to stand behind and show you the impact that we're having as a technology function. And it all comes back down to, unfortunately, IT still likes to go into a dark room sometimes and just get hands on keyboards versus actually interact with the business on an ongoing basis.
And there's two quick ones, and I asked you when I was coming out on time. Two quick ones. So that measurable layer of KPIs, and customer years ago, we ended up getting to the point where we had the individual PDRs, the individuals, that the staff, who would have a rolled up KPI. You do your job here, it will move the needle here. If you move the needle here, that's like a documented position. So from a self-fulfillment point of view, they knew what was going on, and they knew if they did their job, the metrics, and it was all taken care of, almost like a pre-written business case. But the ongoing measurement, and if we have a vendor conversation, this is where I'd love to see the industry change. Imagine a scenario: the vendor sells a product stack and it's estimated ROI. Well, back it up then. What if we don't get it? Are we getting a marginal refund? I know that's a crazy thing to say, but I mean, some conversations, maybe not. That's what I'd love to see the industry change from a software technology point of view. Is if the business case is so good, back it up.
100%. And the day we get to outcome-based payment structures,
Come in, man. Come in. Come in.
It's the way we have to look at it, because we should stand by what we say.
Mm-hmm. There's another huge discussion that we could have. So look, I'm going to wrap up. Louis, thank you so much. I've learned so much today. It's been really superb. So your knowledge is amazing. Thank you so much for giving up your time. So we kind of talked about enterprise orchestration, what it is, why now, and you talked about that tech is sort of leapfrogging people's knowledge with AI, and employees have better access to chat than they get at work at the moment, which I thought was really, really interesting. Today, people are on one of 4 kind of levels of maturity, kind of a basic, they've got some tactical stuff in, they've got a scalability challenge and a governance challenge with that. The second level is they've recognized the importance, they've put in an integration layer or iPad solution, but it's around 1 or 2 core processes. Thirdly, they've got a strategy, they're leveraging iPads to orchestrate and starting to use agentic in a real solid way. And the fourth is those super mature customers, right, who've got digital employees on their org chart now and things. So building a business case, he said, there's 2 ways to do it. Either you invest with with a kind of sunk cost, and you know that hopefully in the return there'll be returns, but you don't know what they are. Or you bundle that capability into a project like an ERP upgrade or something like that, which I think a lot of our listeners will certainly know how to do. And I said, where do you start? Start with the use case, right? What are you trying to achieve? How does this make a difference to the strategic operational priorities of the business? What does the TCO look like? Can you afford this tool really, and what you need? Can you measure the output of what you're doing? And do you have the operating model and processes to support it, and therefore framework and governance first before you go out and buy the tech and look at this stuff with a 3 to 5 year view? And is your vendor future proofing what we can do to help the the huge rate of change that we're seeing today. Then you talked about the top 3 things to do. Firstly, plan. Make sure you know what, why, your objectives, are they measurable, etc. The second thing is get the right stakeholders in place. Build those business relationships to make sure that we all win the business, not just IT. It's not 2 separate projects. And thirdly, you said make sure that you have a governance, security, and observability wrapped around this early on. And you said don't just buy tech from the shiny vendor that is out there. Don't necessarily just buy it as a bolt-on from a super vendor that you're already using, and make strategic decisions, not tactical decisions there. Now, I'm sure I've missed half of what we've talked about. Matt, was there any obvious things that I missed out?
I think every time you come to wrap, I feel they're getting longer and longer. I mean, it's a good thing. But no, I think you're pretty thorough. We haven't asked, I guess, Louis, on if people want to get in touch. Where do they want to go?
Yeah. If you want to get in touch with us, you're more than happy to reach out to me on LinkedIn, or you can go to our website at enably.uk. We have otherwise, it's drop me an email at louis@enably.co.uk.
Awesome, wonderful. I'm going to drop that. Trying to drop that in the chat. Oh, I can't drop it in the chat for some reason. No.
From this end. Okay.
But yeah, do feel free to reach out to Louis. Like this is an area where having a conversation with somebody that knows what they're talking about, as Louis has clearly demonstrated today, is just completely invaluable. He's been there, got the war stories, he's seen what works and what doesn't, and you'll save yourself months, if not years, of heartache and probably a lot of money as well by spending some time with Louis. So, but thank you so much again for coming on. Really appreciate you giving up your time. Matt, what do we have for our audience coming up next?
In I think 2 or 3 weeks' time, I think it's the 5th of December. We have Greg O'Reilly joining us from Observability Platforms, where we're talking all about observability, and he's a super, maybe as knowledgeable as observability as Louis is on iPaaS. So that will be a really cool conversation.
We're going to need about 5 hours for that one, I think.
I know. So that one's booked in, confirmed. And then we do have one we're just working on in the background. I don't think we put the public post out yet, but we have a specific enterprise service management based one, which will be in early Jan. I think we'll sort that out in a few days' time.
Super, amazing. Once again, if you've got any topics you'd like us to cover or guests you think we should have on the show, please drop us a line. In the meantime, thanks again, Louis, and thanks everyone for listening. Take care.
See ya.
Thanks.